Hey, I'm Theron Q. Ramacharaka. Now, this video is going to be along slightly different lines than most of the ones that I have, well then, I guess any of the ones I have previously posted, with the exception perhaps of the calm attention technique for the mood of calm confidence. It's more along those lines, but it's going to be much more detailed and comprehensive. Now, it's going to address, this video is going to address various areas of discourse. It's going to address, for example, what a regimen for self-development might look like from my point of view, or the way I go about it. Given the kinds of information that are provided here in my channel, how would you take that kind of information and put together a program for yourself, a program of self-evolvement toward maybe some specific end? Now, in the Arcane Teachings here by William Walker Atkinson in my channel that I've narrated, there is a method there laid out, a very wonderful method for movement towards true selfhood. The principles there will, in one way or another, show up here in this video. There will be other things here as well. We have more specific intent here and get into more detail with respect to a personal program. We're going to talk about mind training. We're going to talk about the subconscious mind. We're also going to talk about how to deal with very difficult, disturbing life situations. Let's say in your job. Let's say your job is, or you are training to be an emergency medical technician. And you realize, insofar as you are a spiritually minded person and you understand some psychology, you understand that you want to serve humanity. Okay? You want to do this in your career. You want to be of help to people who are having a very difficult time at the moment of your encounter with them. And you want to be able to do this in a healthy manner for yourself. You don't want to be dragged down. You don't want to go into psychological denial over maybe some horrible things you've seen. You don't want to have nightmares. You don't want to repress. You want to be able to stay healthy. You want to be able to pull through it in a very healthy manner so that you not only maintain good health of your own, mental, physical, emotional health of your own, but you remain able to help others in most efficient and effective manner without repression or denial, like I said, and without becoming clinically distant and just kind of cold at the same time. Okay, this is a challenge. As I've laid it out right here, that's a challenge right there. Now, so what kind of a mental training program or what kind of a personal development program would you put together to achieve that goal? To what extent? Really, I mean, to a significant extent. Okay, and we're going to address that. In fact, we're going to follow through with instruction that would be laid out along this line, using an example along the way. We'll pretend that yes, you are in emergency medical technician training. We'll use that as an example along the way here. And we're going to talk about evil. I mean, that's another distressing thing in the world. A very disturbing thing, the presence of evil and any particular instantiations of it. Again, if you're an emergency medical technician, you may run into numerous circumstances in your career in which you're going to think it's going to look like you just came face to face with the results of evil. Injuries inflicted upon another person bodily. intentionally by someone else. The effects of drunk drivers. Who knows what? But at some point, the question of evil or the problem of evil is going to come into your mind, and you're going to maybe get to feeling like you're in a position to be battling evil face to face. And how do you deal with that? What kind of a program, what would a program for personal development along all these lines look like? Both in theory and in practice. What would it look like? That's the general nature of this video. So, let's pretend that you have come to me as a student in emergency medical technology, and you have this concern. So, how can you healthily carry out the responsibilities of an EMT, emergency medical technician career? More specifically, as an EMT, how do you witness and attend to people's acute medical problems, injuries, and deaths, such that you minimize or endure no emotional hardship or relevant stress? Now remember, you don't have to be going to EMT school to benefit from this. I'm just using this particular application, hypothetical application here, as an example of the real point at work here, weaving throughout this video, for purposes of making it more clear. Okay. How do you witness and attend to people's acute medical problems, injuries, and deaths, such that you minimize or endure no emotional hardship and relevant stress? No repression, no suppression, no clinical distancing, and yet with minimized or no short and long-term ill effects. How? Now, I set answering the question as my goal, and you, as this hypothetical student of emergency medical technology, set actualizing the answer as your goal. All right effort and all right work occurs as service to humanity's evolution and moreover to that of all life. And it occurs as such because it is our duty as instruments of universal will. This is framing the question and its potential answer in a larger context. The question and my answer in a larger context. Let's take a look at it again now. All right effort and all right work occurs as service to humanity's evolution and moreover to that of all life. And it occurs as such because it is our duty as instruments of universal will. Furthermore, to function at our best in doing right work, we must learn to use our individual will, our so-called individual will, our individual access to universal will, to be more exact, to intentionally control our thoughts, our emotions, and our actions toward the achievement of clearly defined ethical goals as part of our duty as instruments of universal will. To function at our best in doing right work, we must learn to use our individual will, our power, our use of the power of will, to intentionally control our thoughts, our emotions, and our actions toward the achievement of clearly defined goals, or a clearly defined goal such as attending to people's acute medical problems, injuries, and deaths, such that we minimize or endure no emotional hardship and relevant stress without repression, suppression, clinical distancing, and so forth. That would be a goal, right? Toward the achievement of a clearly defined goal or goals in general involving witnessing and attending to people's acute medical problems and so forth, like I just said. An ethical goal ultimately functions to serve humanity's evolution. And this is an ethical goal, the one in the example here. Now, in the end, any solution to this question must satisfy a variety of necessary conditions. It must appeal to your trust in its value. It has to be logical. It has to make sense. It has to be intuitive. It has to ring true. It has to be practical, doable. It has to be consistent with universal laws of operation. It has to be consistent with mental laws of operation. It has to be consistent with natural laws of operation, those of the physical plane, where our biological organisms manifest. It has to involve increased understanding. It has to increase your awareness. I mean, if you already had the full awareness necessary, you wouldn't be having the question, wouldn't be needing any personal development toward the end. It must involve required action. It has to evolve the way we do things mentally, evolve the way we do things emotionally, and evolve the way we do things physically, and evolve our control of energy. Those are some necessary conditions. In fact, that might be pretty much all of them for the specific example that we're running through here. The sufficient condition for actualizing the goal is your earnest action, earnest and perseverant action with the necessary conditions that I just named. Let's examine a scenario, an EMT scenario, which we can use as an example, or I don't know, for lack of a better word, off the top of my head here, as a metaphor. That's not really a metaphor, an example of a general type of situation that we may be addressing, such as just coping with evil in the world, or any reason, any kind of difficulty that life will give us that we want to be able to handle better. So we're developing a personal development technique here, method. Personal evolution method. Involving some mind training at the same time. I mean, it all works together here. Let's just take an example of a scenario to help make this whole purpose of this video clear here. Just an example scenario from the EMT field. Okay? You're this imaginary EMT student, right? With this question to answer. Let's examine a hypothetical EMT work scenario that has an outcome that runs inconsistently with your goal. Runs inconsistently with the way you want things to work in your career for you. You know, the ability to be of assistance to people without it hurting you. You're on duty and a call comes in. A pregnant woman has been beaten and shot in her apartment by some teenagers during a home invasion. That's all you know at the moment. As you make the run to the scene, you hear and you feel your heart pounding. Your blood pressure must be going through the roof. You feel nervous excitation. You hope that you'll be able to handle this one well. You wonder what's going on through your coworkers' minds. Are they nervous? They look rather calm. You wonder whether their calmness is genuine. You don't feel calm. You try to appear calm. This is no time for your body language to betray the fact that you don't feel totally calm about this. Hell, how could you feel calm at a time like this? You're racing toward a tragedy. You have to be calm. That's a little confusing. Somehow you have to distance yourself from yourself to pull this off. But for God's sakes, this woman could be someone you know. Somehow you have to distance yourself from her too. No wonder. You wonder where your self will go during this distancing. And think, it's a little weird to think that, but you're thinking it for a moment. You envision what you might find. There will be blood. Oh, you know that. You picture it, lots of it. You picture it pouring down her face. It's not a pleasant sight. So you look out the ambulance window. You see people walking on the sidewalks holding their hands over their ears due to the sound of the siren of your vehicle. You think about your role in this situation. You wonder whether you might be doing something wrong. You wonder whether you are a hero. Other people will be watching you. You know that at least one of them will think that you must be hardened to these kind of things. What with the way you just go about doing what you do. You wonder whether you will help save this woman's life today. You notice that's an appealing concept. You fight for a moment to stifle it from pumping up your ego. You remind yourself that this is no time for concerns over your ego now. That thought enters your mind. But you know that your job is important right now. You feel a little fear. Can you do this without freaking out a bit? What the hell? You go ahead and let your ego pump up a bit. It did it on its own. Wait a minute, humble back down, you say to yourself. And she's pregnant, you remember. You wonder what sort of asshole would shoot a pregnant woman. Now you feel angry. This is insane, you tell yourself. Evil people, you tell yourself, insane and evil. You arrive. Sure enough, it's a horror show. This woman clearly was physically attractive until she got beaten and shot. But now she's shaking. And she's covered with blood. Her face is swollen badly on one side. Part of her scalp is missing. It is on the floor. Her fetus has miscarried. The woman's legs are broken and bruised. Several of her teeth are gone. Blood is pouring from her mouth. Her clothes are drenched. There is a hole through her lung. You hear her vainly gasping. Bubbles of air mix with the blood. You wonder again what kind of person could do this. You also wonder what kind of person could stand there right now and calmly attend to her needs. Some woman runs in and screams. You have to get her out of there. Just what you need, a freaking Hollywood screamer in this scene, huh? You understand that scream? You wanted to scream too. But of course you couldn't do it for many reasons. You have work to do, being one of them. But to do it, you have to get back out to that ambulance and get some medical equipment. Other than what you brought in the first place. Just say, for example. As you're getting out of the ambulance, you remember from your training that you should bring something else along too. So you climb back in and get it. Damn it, every second counts here. You go back upstairs to the scene. You and your co-workers do all that you can, but the situation is not good. She might not make it to the hospital. A cop examines projectile holes in the wall while he shoves a couple sticks of gum in his mouth. You look at the woman's wounds again. You imagine the fear she felt when she got shot. You wonder what she's going through right now. You feel sick inside. But it's time to pack her into the ambulance. You ride in the back with her. She reaches for your hand. And then she flatlines. You do what you can. It's not enough. Well, she makes it to the hospital. Her body does. But she, as we say, she died on the way there. On the way back to the company station, you're quiet. You look out the window. People are walking as usual. Somebody is yelling at a car that almost hit them. A pregnant lady is pushing a baby stroller. A couple of shady-looking teenagers are hanging out in front of a store. One of your coworkers says he feels hungry. You feel angry. You feel frightened for your family. What if this was to happen to someone you know? You want to kill the perpetrator of this crime. Suddenly it hits you. If you had been quicker when you got down to get that medical equipment, damn it, if you had not had to go climb back in for another piece of gear, could her life have been saved? I mean, according to your medical knowledge, that's possible. So now you suddenly feel some guilt. One of your coworkers looks over at you. Your face must have given away your thoughts. It must have. He says, hey, bro, it's not your fault, you know. It's not your fault. You did the best you could. You're not God. It was her time, bro. But you still feel guilty. You don't want to distance yourself like that. Not today. But you have to. Because another call just now came in again. You wonder whether you can go through this again. You feel angry and guilty. You're trembling inside, but you hide it. You feel a storm inside you, but it's somewhere buried. You wonder how many different emotions are all happening at once right now inside you. The main thing that you notice, though, all of a sudden is a rush of adrenaline as you are told that the new call is a car crash involving a group of teenagers. They are possible suspects in the home invasion that you just left. That night, you have trouble sleeping. You just keep seeing that woman in the mess that was her miscarried baby. You keep thinking that you could have done better. You wonder where she is now. You wonder what happens to babies who are never born. But you have to sleep. Your girlfriend, your boyfriend, wants to have sex. You say no, but he or she, I'll stick with she here, nuzzles up close. After all, life must go on. While you have sex with her, you picture that woman. You think that maybe sex is a good thing right now, but why are you feeling like you're going to have an orgasm while you can still in your mind see all that blood and a dead woman holding your hand in your mind? Why are you feeling like you're going to, that's about to happen right now? Well, that freaks you out. Goodness. Is the blood a turn on? This thought passes through your mind. What a mind screw. Put it rather bluntly, what a screwed up screw, okay? So you stop having sex and you just lay there. Your girlfriend says she can't handle this crap anymore. She gets up, leaves your place and goes to her own house. Maybe she'll hang in there. She's proud of you. You know that now. You've told her some of the things that you've had to deal with, but you had stopped telling her. I mean, she had been your confidant, but she didn't like thinking about this stuff too much. It messed with her head. What the heck, you know? She's not the one who's out there. Doesn't she get it that someday she might be the victim and need you? Why did she just get up and go home? I mean, you need her right now. For far less. Even. You feel angry and lonely and understanding at the same time. Damn teenagers anyway, you say out loud. How could they beat and shoot anybody? Anybody, let alone a beautiful pregnant woman. That's evil shit. Evil bastards. That's what you're saying to yourself. Maybe they were the ones in that crash. Well, yeah, what goes around comes around. You can't even think about the crash right now. The woman is in a better place. Got to hold that thought, right? But you're still here in this screwed up world, alone in bed, unable to sleep. Yeah, well, tomorrow's another day. And damn, your shoulders feel stiff. You're hungry, but food doesn't appeal to you right now. You do some push-ups. Exercise reduces stress. It pumps you up a bit. And you think to yourself, you can't go on like this. Something has to break. But the thought crosses your mind that now you understand more than before that you have to man up and keep on walking. You have to pay the bills. You have invested a lot in this career, and you're no wimp. And everybody's proud of you. You conjure up some pride in what you did today. That's it. Pride. That's the solution. You focus on feeling good about what you did, right? Not everybody can do it, but you can. You're the type who can do it. You're someone who does it. You just did it. There's the proof. And you fall asleep and you dream about work. Okay. That's the end of the scenario. That's not the way you want things to go. Not if you have this goal that was inherent in the question asked in the first place. How do I self-evolve to the point where I can do this in my career, or this still just being an example going on here of a more general thing. That's the line of discourse here. How do I do it without these detrimental effects? The hypothetical scenario involves short-term and probably long-term ill effects. There's anger, there's fear, there's guilt. There are social effects. There are physical, emotional, and psychological effects. There are existential effects. There's a suggestion of repression, suppression, disturbance, and clinical distancing. There is the possibility of one day becoming an unfeeling robot. So what about you in this scenario needs to be revised in order for this to run consistently with your goal? Control over your thoughts certainly jumps out. Emotional management too. Better presence of mind on the job as well. Something needs to be done about those mental images going on too. And with the sounds that go with them. And something needs to happen about how you go about feeling. Should it be more? Should it be less? Feeling. When I'm saying feeling here, I don't mean emotions, like hurt your feelings, as in injured your ego at an emotional level. I'm talking about feeling, awareness. Akin to the general idea behind, or the spirit of the word sensing. Feeling. I mean, you can feel a thought. You can feel an emotion. You can feel a hot stove. You can feel energy. That kind of feeling. Should we feel more? Should we feel less? Or just more accurately feel? Or is there something else about it that can evolve in the right direction? And what about death? What about the idea of someone living while death might be better? What about that? Maybe something could also be done about the whole approach to work. Or about your worldview. Huh? And also about your view of who you are and who other people are. And about events. And the things that people do. And the things that happen to them. Perhaps even about what people are. In fact, about just about every part of your way of being needs revision here. Well, that then involves appropriate changes at all planes and in your sense of identity in them. And that's where we stand in this project. If you are to meet your goal. None of this is to say that there's something wrong with your current state of affairs. No. It just means that your current state of affairs is not consistent with your goal. To be consistent with your goal requires more than average personal development. If average commonplace methods and objects of personal development were appropriate, more people would have accomplished it. And if so, the answer to your original question would be immediately at hand. And you wouldn't even have the question, really. It might even be perhaps taught in EMT and other medical training. Now I want to talk about sense of identity. About that phrase that I just mentioned, sense of identity. I have used it elsewhere in my channel here. We've talked about it. Other people refer to it sometimes. What does it mean? We take it to mean who or what we think we are. Okay, fine. But such talk usually is not associated with significant personal development. However, elsewhere, we have talked about a related, more important phrase that does. It is the plane of being in which our conscious sense of identity manifests. Perhaps you've heard me say something similar to that, or perhaps you've heard something similar to that elsewhere. The plane of being in which our conscious sense of identity manifests. There's a more important related phrase than just a sense of identity. All right. As we have discussed it, it so happens that most people's sense of identity is in the material plane. We discussed that elsewhere on my channel here. You've probably run into that idea elsewhere. Okay. Most people's sense of identity is in the material plane, whether they know it or not. If our inner well-being is adversely affected by what comes through our physical senses, that's a clue that our sense of identity is rooted in the material plane. All sorts of thoughts, emotions, and so forth get wrapped up in sensory input. Even some of our highest thoughts and beliefs. Our sense of identity lies somewhere in that maze. For example, in the above hypothetical scenario, the teenagers committed an act of evil. And that perception played into the ill effects the event had on you in its aftermath. It played into the anger, at least. Did evil come in through the senses? In the scenario, the result of it did. But the idea of evil was already in your mind. It's a preconceived notion. It was the idea, combined with sensory information, just sensory information, combined with that pre-existing idea, that adversely affected your relevant well-being. And that idea, although it being something mental, has to do with the material plane and the things that people do in it and that come in through the physical senses. Evil is an example of an entirely lower several planes thing. A thing of the lower planes, the group of the lower planes of the manifest cosmos. Over that, there should be no doubt. Self-identity among those planes keeps us wrapped up in ways of being that are wrapped up in those planes. The overall task in our project here, then, well, it's multiple. For one, it is to evolve such affairs as emotional responses and emotional management at their own level, which involves the physical, but mostly the astral plane levels of our general beings. Stated more simply, this involves dealing with emotions at their own level, at the emotional level. Emotional measures to achieve emotional results, control with respect to control. Working on them head on. But another aspect of the task involves moving sense of identity to an entirely higher level, so that you can also learn to manage these lower plane events within your general being from a higher point than that in which they actually exist. That is the greater key. The former is the lesser key. That former being, again, say, dealing with emotions, dealing with emotional control at the emotional level. Let's say that involves like the physical and the astral planes of our being. We'll call that the lesser key. The greater key again being another aspect of the task, which involves moving our sense of identity to an entirely higher level, out of the lower planes, into the higher planes, so that we can learn to manage these lower plane events with which we're dealing, events within our general being, from a higher point than that in which they are actually occurring. That's the greater key. Both keys must be employed. Now, can we right now get a better grip on what the phrase, the plane of your being in which your conscious sense of identity manifests, means? This kind of phrase is foreign to a lot of people and amorphous to many people who have considered such a phrase. We can understand the idea of planes of being. It's been laid out elsewhere here in my channel and many other places. We can understand the idea of planes of being and understand how it applies to us to some extent. And we can think we have a grip on knowledge of higher planes, and we can say things like, I am spirit, or I am a focal point, a center of will focalization in the cosmos, or such things. But it seems that we still feel a bit baffled by the phrase, let's say, the plane of being in which your conscious sense of identity manifests. What that means. Well, consider what we've talked about regarding some elsewhere. What we've talked about, let's say in the arcane teachings, I think it's mentioned. Perhaps in the Astral World series that I have narrated here. The Arcane Teachings being another series that I have narrated here on my channel. But I'm referring to animals' evolution from group soul to individualized soul. Say most animals kind of belong to a group soul. And while we have individual animals, they're not individualized in the same sense that humans are. Now, of course, there's a scale here of individualization. And there's a little leap that's made from the animals to the humans. Although granted, biologically, we consider our biological bodies to be animal as well, part of the animal kingdom. I'm talking about the non-human, the beasts, okay? There is a scale, a gradation of individualization involved, but there is a jump that gets made. There is a something additional when it comes to even the lowest, most bestial humans that even the highest, most developed animals don't have. There's a little jump there. Now, the animals, as a general statement, notwithstanding the fact that there are various grades or degrees of individualization there, we cannot be thinking of individualization in the same sense as the term applies to humanity. Right? In general, it's a general way of saying it, that the individual animals as a soul belong to a group soul. They have an astral body, like we do, and it exists for a short period after death of the physical body, but not very long. The length depending on the length of its duration, depending. But there's nothing else that continues to exist once that astral body dissolves into its original elements. What happens is that whatever there was of an individual soul there just blends back in with the group soul of of the general of the species. If species is the right word to use here. It's the right taxonomical term to use. All right. Let's say we're departing from that point of view here. Consider that now. Consider information now about regarding some animals' evolution from a group soul to an individualized soul. Some domestic species are ones that can do that. This is the case in which a member, a physicalized, a manifested, physicalized member or individual, let's say house dog, domestic dog, okay, is about to break away from that group soul status and to become an individual. In other words, it's going to have something that persists upon the death of this body. It's not going to blend back into the dog group soul anymore. It's going to take a leap forward and become a potentially true individual. It will incarnate again. There will be something of this last life, this current life, or let's say, that will carry through to a next incarnation. And that next incarnation will be human. It will take that leap. There are reasons for that to happen. It will take that leap, and of course, while it was at the top of evolution when it comes to doghood, is now at the bottom of evolution when it comes to manhood. Here and there exists a specific example of such a pet. In such cases, no doubt the pet has had such a life that it seems to think like a person. People might point out that the animal even thinks it is a person. It anticipates what its master wants. It displays great compassion and desire to cooperate. It seems like a person in an animal's body. It seems to not only act in certain human ways, but also actually identify its very sense of self with humanity. It seems consciously that far above cathood or doghood, and that consciousness seems to pervade the animal's inner workings and outer workings. Such an animal is probably about to individualize and enter humanity in its first bona fide incarnation. When it does, it will start at the bottom of the human species and be animal-like, but just previously, it was at the very top of animalhood. Now that's an example of identifying with a higher kingdom to the point where the corresponding evolution then manifests. That's the point I was getting at with the whole animal example here. Because that's a comparison to what we're really getting at. Okay? Similarly, when having done what it takes to take on enough attributes of a higher plane, and we believe our very selves to belong to that plane, and go about thinking and feeling and acting like the attributes of that plane, we eventually transcend to conscious awareness of identity with that plane. We then literally find our sense of identity rooted in that plane, regardless of what our intellect tells us due to its acquired knowledge of planes. I used the movement from animal kingdom to human kingdom. This is a rough way of putting it. Animality to humanity. As an analogy, how it tends to work. The animal identifies with that next step in the evolutionary process, to the point of making that step. And then it finds its sense of identity in that as a manifest thing. In the same manner, we do this with higher planes of identity, self-identity. What is more, if our sense of identity is rooted in the physical plane, and as such we are internally largely affected by what comes in through our physical senses, and our thoughts that follow from that information, it follows that if our sense of identity is rooted in a higher plane, the corresponding process will follow. We will be centrally, consciously affected by the information and characteristics of that plane. If that plane happens to be even the lowest subplane of the higher mental plane, where evil and human imperfection do not exist, by the way, then although we still have our physical senses and they work just fine, we do not process the information coming into them the same way. For one, the little ego does not exist in that higher plane, the false ego, and therefore it is less or non-affected by affairs, or in higher cases yet, doesn't even exist. Our point of view is entirely different. For example, although we understand the lower level discourse about something like evil, we ourselves are above it in our knowledge, emotions, and overall well-being. Imagine not feeling burdened by the evils of the world, and in fact barely noticing them except by choice. Imagine that. Now that was all just to get a clearer idea of what it means to identify with some other plane than the lowest. The phrase seems to obscure if we are still largely identified with the lowest plane, for we do not have present experience of having moved our conscious sense of identity to any higher one. So hopefully the example of the animal helped, or the analogy of the animal helped. Now here's an overview of the solution to the problematic attributes of that hypothetical scenario of going out on an ambulance call, or just in general dealing with any of the difficulties of the world. Overview of the solution that I'm talking about here, the greater and lesser keys that I've referred to, solution to the problematic attributes of the scenario. Remember, it didn't go in correspondence with what's intended, what we want as our goal. So it has attributes that constitute the problem. Overview of the solution to those problematic attributes. Well, the problem of healthily dealing with people in terrible physical, astral, and lower mental plane situations finds its major solution in the greater key that I mentioned. The lesser key is to deal with the phenomena of those lower planes at their own plane level in a better manner. The combined aspects of the solution are the keys to it. That way, not only are, for example, emotions learned to be dealt with at their own level with evolved emotional management techniques, which in themselves actually draw on higher plane attributes, by the way. But also, the very act of employing those techniques is approached from a higher plane perspective and sense of identity itself. Both. This not only adds much power to the techniques, but it also helps us to rise above the very phenomena that the techniques are meant to help us manage. And this is our approach here. It is the radical approach to a radical situation. It is the appropriate approach to a problem that cannot be solved by lower plane work alone. That is why people rarely solve it for themselves. No wonder many people refer to those rare people who can deal with human tragedy day in and day out with total compassion and very low stress and minimized or no ill personal effects. No wonder they refer to those people as saints. So you must be ready to evolve. To actualize your goal, you have to engage the sufficient condition. Hopefully, what I give you to know and to do will be enough of the right stuff. Now, I'm not going to give it all here. This entire discourse that I'm reading from does go on further than what I'm going to present in this video. But I will get to such affairs in other videos, and some of it will be given here. Just some beginnings. And just as a preview, one technique of emotional control that I'm talking about that deals with emotions at its own level, at the emotional level, but which of course actually draws on some higher plane attributes, like I already said, is in my other video called the Calm Attention Technique for the Mood of Calm Confidence. That fits in here. But I'm not going to go that far in this video. I will talk about some other things, but not the whole thing that I'm referring to here when I say, where is it? Hopefully what I give you to know and to do will be enough of the right stuff here. I'm not going to give you the entirety of what I'm referring to right there. If not, it'll point you in the right direction far better than anything else available that I know of. It will in the least make a dramatic improvement. Fortunately, I am giving you methods, the results of which have no limits. Even the bit that I'm going to actually give here, in and of itself, just those things, the results have no limits. So in large, by far, it is your earnestness that will determine the extent of the results for you. Now, I want to make it clear here, and this I have written down. Right? I'm no saint. We referred to saints here earlier, or people who other people might refer to as saints. I am no saint, literally, or just as a rhetorical tool. No. I am little different than you. I am not above you. I know little more than you do. I just maybe, and truthfully, maybe not, have more knowledge in these affairs, a little bit more, right? And a little more experience with this material that I'm presenting than perhaps you do. I don't know, but that might be the case. I just want to set that out here. And I know that progress with some such material, it goes slowly. You can't expect it all to come suddenly together for you. Remember, I'm laying out what a program of self-development, of self-evolution, personal evolution, might look like by giving you an example of one in an exemplary scenario. Or at least I'm giving you an example of part of one. Some results of the actions you will perform will be nearly immediate. Take, for example, you experiencing controlling energy through your wrist. I'll show you that right now. That's a rather sudden result. Broadly speaking, it's a physical plane phenomenon. As your sensitivity increases, you learn to identify and feel more subtle and sublime states of affairs. Let me show you this. Here's an example of a result of an action that you can perform, and that the result will be nearly immediate. It's an example of experiencing controlling energy through your wrist and feeling it. Feeling. Energy. Do this. If you have a problem with your wrist, don't do it. Or only do it to the extent that you're comfortable. Don't hurt yourself. Just try this a moment. Take your wrist, hold it tight. grab behind where the joint is, okay, so that you can freely move your hand. Hold tightly so that as you rotate your hand, your forearm does not turn. Keep it still. Point your fingers straight up, and now start in any, point your hand in any given direction, right? And push it as far as you can in that direction while slowly rotating your wrist. Push as far as you can in each direction as you go. As far back as you can, as far that way as you can, holding your forearm stable so that you are truly turning the joint, rotating the joint of your wrist without cheating. As far as you can, all the way out to your fingertips, around that circle. Five times, okay? 5 times like that. And then go the other way. This takes some attention. Don't just do it, like, don't do that. Pay attention. Do it to its limit. As far as is comfortable for you. Once you've gone both ways, point your fingers straight up again, right? And make a fist. Keeping your wrist straight. See that? Not back here, not forward. Straight. Tight fist. Squeeze. 5 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now release it. Keep your grip on your wrist. And to the greatest extent that is comfortable for you, flip your wrist, your hand up and down. Watch. I'll do it slow motion. All right, but it looks like this. 5 times. Then release your forearm and flick your wrist. Like that, side to side. Once you've done that, then just relax. You will feel something going through your wrist. You'll feel it. Now, there are various things going on at once. Yes. Blood flow. What we're after is the awareness of energy flowing more freely through your wrist than it was before you did this. It usually feels rather cool. There was a flow of energy there. I want you to notice that. That's an immediate result that has to do with a physical method of controlling energy flow. You can feel it. Where was I in reading this? Some results of progress with some material along in this whole program here will come slowly. Some will not be noticeable until later. Don't expect this all to come together suddenly. Some results of the actions you will perform will be nearly immediate. Take, for example, you experiencing controlling the energy through your wrist. That was rather sudden. Broadly speaking, centrally it was a physical plane phenomenon. As your sensitivity increases, you will identify and feel more subtle and sublime states of affairs. It's a good idea to start with things that are very noticeable immediately, like that, with the wrist. And then increase your sensitivity in increments toward more subtle and sublime states of affairs. As stated, other breakthroughs will come more slowly. Some will be noticeable and will not be noticeable until later, after the inner working has taken place subconsciously. Some understanding will come in increments, but it's all meant to work together, and it will. I need to see where I need to scroll down to now. I have to skip some of this that I have written. This was actually written for a person who needed my help, specifically. Now, in this next section, which has to do with goals and motives, I am will engage in a process that is fundamental to many applications. The process involves purification and transmutation. These are terms used in alchemy. We're going to apply them in a mental alchemy manner. Mental, even spiritual alchemy manner. We're going to apply it specifically to goals and motives. Purification and transmutation. Transmutation has to do with something changing to a higher level or form of itself, or bringing it to bear on a higher plane. You cannot transmute something until it is purified at its current level or plane. If you are aware of the material in the arcane teachings and the arcane formulas by William Walker Atkinson, presented here in this channel, my channel, by me, then you will remember something about finding the point of balance between two poles, and only when that point of balance is at least approximated can that scale, that whole thing, that is the hypothetical line between two poles, be elevated to a new level. The point of balance must first be achieved, then that point of balance can be raised. There's a whole talk about circles, circularity being changed into spirality, or spiral nature of things, such that evolvement takes place in the cyclic nature, the cyclic trend of events, of life and the cosmos. And it has to do with finding with the point of balance between two poles. Then things can move forward from that point of balance. This is very similar to what's being said here. Same principles at work, just a different way of using them. You cannot transmute something until it is purified at its current plane or level. The purified at its current plane or level is analogous to the finding the point of balance between two poles. I'm not saying it's the same thing. Not directly. But it's the same basic operation or kind of thing at work here. Transmutation, a movement bringing to bear on a higher plane, that's an evolvement. Okay? And that can't be done until a thing is purified, which is similar to finding the point of balance between two poles. Then it can be moved to a higher level. Same general kind of movement here. An example is in Raja Yoga. The extent to which the real progress occurs is the extent to which purification occurs. This is one reason why so much yoga of today in the Western world particularly doesn't have much great effect, doesn't have much effect on people. Because there are so many aspects of it, such as you have to be involved in purifying your motives. You have to get involved in right thinking. You have to develop a very high ethical sense. You have to, there are so many ways of going about things that are prerequisite to the actual work on the nervous system actually being able to do much. And if these parts don't all work together, there's either very little progress or there's very imbalanced progress. And really, in some regards, it's better to be imbalanced with not much progress than it is to be highly progressed, very imbalanced. That you can be really out of whack like that, instead of just a little out of whack. Transmutation has to do with changing something to a higher level or form of itself, or bringing it to bear on a higher plane. You cannot transmute something until it's purified at its current level or plane. An example is in Raja Yoga. The extent to which real progress occurs is the extent to which purification occurs. Intentionally employing such principles is using occult principles. Not employing these produces surface results only. That is not to say that they never are employed without the specific intent to do so. They do get applied beyond awareness quite often, but not in a controlled and full-blown manner that way. Why employ them? Consciously, intentionally? Because they work. Why? Simply due to the fact that they are the principles behind the way things work. And it is the case that for results to be consistent with your goal, they must result in a more than average personal development. The goal in this hypothetical scenario here, or anything similar to it, to which this general outline may be applied. Any program of personal development that helps us to really deal with difficulties of the world. Like I said, if average commonplace methods and objects of personal development were appropriate here, more people would have accomplished it. You need to apply the right principles in the right ways and to their fullest possible extent. Now I strongly invite you to engage in some personal alchemy as follows. This involves purification, transmutation, hermetic sealing, and controlled application with respect to goals and motives. And I want to talk a little bit more about that, just that topic, goals and motives, before moving on. This is most lengthy and complex action. It's the most lengthy and complex action instruction in this video. But you have only to do it once. So make it good. This is something to actually do. But first I want to talk to just a little bit about goals and motives. Elsewhere, I mentioned I made a video called the Calm Intention Technique for the Mood of Calm Confidence, and in it I said that various factors are very important. It has to work at the subconscious programming level. It has to affect the subconscious functionings of our lives. Such a technique. And it involves a couple of rules. The two main ones that I spoke of are attention and intention. I mentioned that there is something else that's very important. Motive. I said that your earnestness and perseverance will determine the extent of the results of the technique for you. And it is your motives that will determine the nature of the results. So motives are very important, but then I went ahead and said, I'm not going to talk about motives here in this video, the Calm Intention Technique video. I merely pointed it out. And I said that I will get to motives elsewhere. I'm getting to motives here. Motives and goals are very closely related. A goal, of course, we know what a goal is. Is where we want to get to. A motive is something that is emotionally charged enough to drive us to action. But a motive and a goal can look like exactly the same thing. If you write them down, if you write down a goal and it is something that drives you to action, well, then it has emotive force. So whether you want to say it's a motive or a goal at that point is kind of arbitrary. But there can be goals that don't have emotive force. So they wouldn't really qualify as being a motive. And we might have motives, things that drive us to action, but we don't really have anything directly connected with them that we set as a life goal or an immediate objective. Depends on our value system at the moment, our priorities. But there is a blending and a dovetailing of goal and motive. So we're going to approach this here largely from the point of view that we're dealing with goals. Motive will weave into it as we go. Emotive force will weave into it. We will want to infuse our goals that we really want to get to. Let's say the goal here with arriving at a specific point of efficiency and effectiveness, and with let's say emergency medical training school and career. We want to infuse that goal with emotive force. Now, at this point in the general project, it's vital for you to establish crystal clarity over your goal or goals. Can you get exactly where you want to go with all of this if you don't know exactly where you are going? No, you cannot. Now, we have stated the goal, yes. It's been laid out, yes. It was in the first two paragraphs in writing here, but it was stated right at the beginning of the video that the goal is to healthfully help people who are in very tragic situations. And again, this is just an example type of thing to which such a procedure that I'm laying out here in this general discourse can be applied. Just an example scenario going on for the purposes of this video. The goal was to be able to help people, make a career out of helping people who are in tragic situations without repression, suppression, denial, clinical distancing, high stress levels, to be able to go about it in a healthy manner and stay in touch with feelings all through life. Go about it in a healthy manner from various points of view. And there were the greater and lesser keys for doing that we've already discussed. Now, can you go about all of this without exactly knowing where you're going? No. We've stated the goal, like I said. It is inherent in the original question. That all of this to which is an answer. We've talked about it plenty. But you need to do this in a clearly specified form. A specific action about it. About clearly defining your goal. In accordance with a formula for it. This is not the only formula that exists in the world. This is a very effective one, and it's following along with the general direction of alchemy, mental alchemy, purification and transmutation. I will at some point briefly mention fluxing as well. Purification, fluxing, and transmutation. But this formula will work for the application given without much consideration of fluxing at all. Right now, you do grasp the desired project result. For let's say it was you who came to me in the first place and posited the question to me and the desired result. There's nothing wrong with your current identification of your goal. Don't get me wrong here. But whether you realize it at present, your statement of it could be radically refined. And that fact and the reasons for it should become clear to you as we go. Now, it just occurs to me, I have referred to alchemy, which involves transmutation. I also said the word refined, the noun form of which is refinement. I have also referred to goal identification and inferred the refinement of identification. This suggests that transmutation of identification involves its refinement. And it just now, within this occurs to me that as long as we're talking about identification of a goal, we've also talked about the sense of identification of who and what we are, self-identity. This suggests that transmutation of identification involves its refinement. So we can apply that statement to various levels of our discourse involving the idea of identification. Now, consider our former topic involving, right here it is, sense of self-identification. I should have read this in detail before I started making this video. Well, I'm thinking along the same lines now as I was when I wrote this. We talked about a transmutation of sense of self-identification. On one connotation, generally stated, the transmutation is from lower self to higher self, from small s to capital S. But on another, it is from lower planes to higher ones. On either connotation, it is a matter of conscious refinement. To continue with alchemical terminology, it is a matter of removing the dross or the slag from the real metal and then raising the metal to a higher form. Refinement. Maybe that helps with understanding more about this thing about planes and self-identification that we talked about earlier. This might be the first time you have encountered goal refinement to this extent that's going to follow. The resultant effectiveness of all your later effort ontologically and logically starts here. All your effort with any other techniques, methods applied, and so forth, logically and ontologically, starts with refinement of your goals and infusing them with motive power. But more specifically, their refinement. Starting right off, knowing where you're going. This serves many functions, not just the outer ones that we're taught about in personal psychology, or which are a matter of common discourse. There are deeper occult things going on. Many levels, and becoming aware of all of these various levels of activity going on, and intending, remember from the calm intention technique video, intending to employ all of those levels, and intending to employ the laws that make it all operate at all those levels, and placing attention on them and the desired result, the intended result, all while performing the actions, are all part of the game. They are all different dimensions of the whole thing going on that when brought into conscious awareness and we apply intent and attention and power of will, help the whole thing to work. Now, when we get our goals clearly defined and we get our motives in there, right, and we're clear about all of that, then when we go forward, we can go forward with our motives in mind. We use intention, attention, power of will, motive, all combined together. But the real starting point of it all, logically, is motive and goal. Goal infused with emotive power. That way we're off in the right direction right from the start. And we can carry our motive into every technique and method employed after that. Here in my video series on this channel, if we follow the course of, or the progression of ideology, well, the first thing I gave of my own was the calm intention technique. I did that because that's also an okay starting point. As long as we very soon thereafter, if we're employing that calm intention technique for our life functioning, well, then we should soon thereafter get motive involved too, and goal involved with it. And also being aware of our motive for performing the calm intention technique and utilizing and implementing the mood of calm confidence in our everyday lives is a very good idea. At least to just make sure that, when we're starting to get control over our minds, we have ethical motives, at least just for that. But being aware of why we're doing what we're doing, when we're doing it, and toward what ends, and what's really driving us to action is very, very, it's an essential component for success. And of course, in knowing ourselves. Know thyself. To continue with the alchemical terminology, it's a matter of removing the dross or the slag from the real metal and then raising the metal to a higher form, refinement. So, how clearly can you currently state or define your goals to yourself? How precisely formulated is it right now? The one about, EMT training, let's say. That's our running example throughout this video. When we stated the goal in the first place, it was inherent in the question. But how precisely formulated is it right now? If it's really important to you, and if you're going to continue doing what it takes to actualize it, now is the time to precisely define where you're headed. This holds true for anything. In fact, now is the time to do more than precisely define it. It is the time to refine it. Petting my cat down here. Puma. It's Puma down here. You've seen Panther more often than Puma in my videos. It is time to refine it, to take it to the higher mental plane by removing the clutter and then by raising it to a higher form. That way all of your effort takes the shortest path toward the desired destination. You see? Your interest in maintaining attention to the effort increases significantly. I'm going to have to ignore that phone call because I'm in the middle of making a long video. That way, all of your effort takes the shortest path toward the desired destination. 1. Your interest in maintaining attention to the effort increases significantly. 2. And you ground the effort and its results in the necessary plane of reality. Ground them in it. Remember? The greater key. When we place our motives and our goals, when we raise them to a higher plane, the higher mental plane level, right? Then our actions toward that goal automatically proceed in that direction. Of course, there's more that has to be done, but everything is now oriented in that direction. All we have to do is now take the steps, to get there. You still have to take steps to get there, but the goal is at a higher plane. So we're oriented correctly. In fact, grounded correctly. So before going any further with matters we've already put into place, do the following. Like I said previously, at the moment, the notion of goal refinement might appear to involve trite rigmarole. I don't know if I actually did say that previously. But at the moment, the notion of goal refinement might appear to involve trite rigmarole. It might. I mean, you already know what the goal is. But after going through this procedure, you'll see the difference. If we are to be aware of occult workings, and we want to place our attention on them and intentionally employ them and get the most result that we can toward our goal, then this is not trite rigmarole. This is taking into consideration things that most people never take into consideration. But remember, we're dealing with an extreme thing, and we need to take, extreme measures. We need to go all the way because, dealing with the actual hazards and cruelties, at least apparent hazards and cruelties of life, when we're coming face to face with something that we call evil, well, remember the scenario that didn't go very well, that call out in the ambulance that we laid out a little while ago, that scenario, and the problems that arose from it. And consider the fact that most people who involve themselves in just very surface ways of dealing with things don't do very well with this stuff. Such people, if they have no interest in or don't believe that there's any better way to go about it, then they might think that such a procedure as this following with goal refinement might appear to be just trite rigmarole. Yeah, to them it is. And if they were to go about this, they would go about it half-heartedly, half-mindedly, and it would in the end have turned out to be exactly what they expected it to be, trite rigmarole. If it appears to be that way at first, well, ignore the appearance. Make this goal refinement into an experience. Absorb yourself in the effort. Absorb yourself into it. Go at it foolhardily and all balls out, so to speak. Okay? Make it sort of sacred, Make it important, like a personal ritual. I want you to take this very seriously and consider what I'm saying here. Ignore the appearance that it's trite rigmarole, if it does appear that way to you, if the very idea of goal refinement make it into an experience, absorb yourself into it, go at it foolhardily, make it sacred, make it important, like a personal ritual. All right, getting started. Before you start, I suggest either, if you know how to do it, if you have learned the calm attention technique for the mood of calm confidence, summon the mood of calm confidence to start. If that's not the case for you, then do take a few relaxing breaths, deep breaths, cyclic, rhythmical, not slowing up or slowing down, just deep, Slow in and out through your nose. In, out, no holding your breath, no clamping your throat shut. Just keep your throat open, your airway open, right? Keep in and out several times, nice and slow, comfortably. In, out. Focus on doing it. Focus your attention on doing it. Just get your attention to come to attention, right? And relax, including your jaw and your tongue, right? Don't clench your jaw, let it go loose. Keep your tongue loose inside your mouth, not pressed up against the roof. Okay? Do that. And then get out a piece of paper and a pencil. A pencil, I said, not a pen. A pencil. Be seated and get comfortable. Now you're going to have to listen to this video numerous times if you go through this procedure, because this is an experience. It's a procedure. Or you might have to stop it and then start it many times as you follow along. But it's juicy stuff, right? Like I said, make it into, it's a personal ritual. A pencil, not a pen. Establish in your mind, after you've been seated and got comfortable with your paper and your pencil, and you're in a relaxed, a relaxed, more calm state than you were just a few moments ago, establish in your mind that what you are about to write is vital to your life. Establish that in your mind. Fix it firmly in your mind that what you are about to write is vital to your life. I mean, think of the goal here as you currently understand it, and understand that it's vital, and that what you are about to write has a lot to do with that. In fact, gets right down to the core of it. That you are going to take that goal, and not just as an exercise on a piece of paper, but the goal itself in your awareness, in your life. You are going to right now set about refining it. For real. The real thing. So, set it in your mind that what you are about to write is actually vital to your life. It's not just something written on a piece of paper. It's not just a little exercise. It's a personal ritual. It's important. Fix your mind to this. After all, consider the possible consequences of having never sought the answer to your original question here. All of this to which is an answer. Consider the possible consequences of just going into, say, EMT training and an EMT career without ever having sought an answer to the question, how do I go about helping people in these tragic situations in a healthy manner for myself and for everybody else for the rest of my life? This is vital. So here we go. The first step is to scribble out a rough statement about what it is you want to achieve. Just get it on paper. You had it in your mind, and no doubt you thought you were pretty damn clear on it. Well, we'll see. Go ahead, just get it written on paper. Do that now. Something to start with, right? Scribble it down. Now we get into a bit of hermetic art. Some alchemy. Purification. First, there's clarification. First step in purification, as I'm laying it out here, is clarification. And the first part of clarification is delineation. You get the idea right now that There's more than one step involved here. And that's true. Delineation as a step in clarification, which in turn is a step in purification. Delineation. You might have noticed that I have at least once stated the word goal as in goals, with the S indicating possible plurality. But the original question here with the EMT example was singular. How do I go about, or my goal is to go about helping people who are in tragic situations in a healthy manner for myself. That there were a few more details given. It was a little bit more explicated than that, but that's a goal. But I have sometimes referred to goals while talking about this very example. My rough rephrasing of it sometimes appears singular too. However, now, see, if you analyze that goal, you'll notice that it can be broken down into various parts. And what we're talking about here right now is delineation as a clarifying, as part of clarification, which in turn is part of purification. So first, let's delineate out the various parts. You can further break down that general goal, that thing you just now scribbled down, into separate parts, into separate ones. The further you can break it down, the better. That's delineation. It has a clarifying effect. That is part of the refinement we're after. You might be able to make a half a dozen or more out of your initial one or two rough statements. Here's an example of the sort of thing I mean. Remember when I earlier listed some necessary conditions that must be met for this goal to be achieved? I could have said them more generally. I listed control over mental energy, control over physical energy. I was pretty specific. I could have just said, I could have combined them or summed them up in maybe 4 or 5 statements, like control over energy, personal energy. And at first, I had, in fact, when I wrote this, I had written them like that. But then I did some delineation. And I turned 3 or 4 or 5 into 13. You don't know the pre-delineated form they were in, and I don't remember it. But if you go back and you hear this again and you listen to those 13 or so necessary conditions for the achievement of this goal here, you can detect that my delineation has a clarifying effect as you go over the resulting list. It's further clarified by way of delineation. Each bit is stated by itself rather than as a part of a byte. It's stated as a bit, if that makes sense, rather than as part of a byte. This is what I suggest that you do with your goal. That is your next step after scribbling down your rough statement of it. So you will end up with a list of goals written down, not just a goal, but they're all component parts of the general goal. But we're turning them into a list of goals, and we're going to keep it like that. So go ahead and do that. The next step in clarification is precision. Now, from that list, rewrite, paying close attention to how you word it. Purify your terminology. Be precise. Use exacting terms now. Get away from just the rough statements that you've now broken into component parts, but still might be rough statements in themselves. Now be precise. Use exacting terms. Use words that mean what you intend. Cut out other words. Be precise now. okay? If you have a little trouble finding the precise words or in deciding which ones to use, then you in fact do not yet have the goal clear in your mind. Because this is part of clarifying it. If it doesn't come out of snap like that, you didn't have the goal clear in your mind. That's what you're working on. That's one level at which you're working. Anyway, that's one thing you're accomplishing here. So work it out. You might have to rewrite a few times. It's not that difficult, really, because you already do have some level of clarity over what you want to achieve. You do. Right now, I just want to get it spelled out precisely, word for word, with your whole being thrown into the act, all right? Your whole being thrown into the act. Do it like that, like you intend at some point to willfully and consciously engrave the words into your subconscious mind and right onto the face of your will itself. Do it like that. Like that's what you're going to do with it, with the finished product. Throw your whole being into the act. Now, how do you select the words? You select them by their meanings. That's how you select your words for exactness, for precision. Select them by their meanings. The meaning of a word is important because it is what the word denotes or refers to in reality. Consider that each of your words refers to something in reality, even if what it refers to is a logical or linguistic function, such as in the case of the word and. Now go ahead and rewrite, carefully selecting precise words. Next step, awareness and feeling. Now with that in place, this former in place, consider the following. Notice that your attention is now on the meanings of the words that you have chosen. And you will feel, yes, feel that your relevant overall goal is clearer in your mind than it was before. Take note of that now. That's the next thing to do. Take note of that. That your overall goal is clearer in your mind than it was before. You have objectified your goal onto paper, enabling you to purify it somewhat by clarifying it, which you did by carefully delineating and selecting its components. And then using exacting terms. Be aware of the clarity. And find the feeling of it, of that clarity inside you. And feel it. Do that now. Become aware of the clarity and feel it. Feel how it feels. This is very important. It is the next step. Put your whole being into it. Next, there's more purifying to be done. The next step is called affirmativization. Affirmativization. Ask a few questions about what you've written. First ask, do any of the meanings of my selected words involve things that I in fact do not want? Things that are not really part of my goal. Like, for example, repression of emotions is not part of your goal. But repression of emotions was stated in the original question, which held inherent within it the statement of the goal. How do I go about doing this and that? Okay, helping people in these circumstances that I'll be doing as part of my career without repression of emotions. See, that was in the question. That's part of the goal, right? To not repress emotions, right? Well, do any of the meanings of my selected words involve things that I in fact do not want? We do not want repression of emotions. We don't want repression, right? That's not one of the things we want. Now, even though it was written into the goal, in the first place in its rough statement, and may still exist in your delineated and exacted statement, still might be there. That word repression might be there, but that's not part of what you want. It's not really part of what you want. Repression of emotions is not a part of your goal. So don't allow mention of it in your list, even as something that you do not want to accomplish. So if your selected words include something like without repression, or any other words that involve not this or not that, or any others that denote something that you do not actually want to accomplish, go back and make sure that every word refers to what you do in fact want to accomplish. Every word. Here's a bit of the involved reasoning. Your subconscious mind does not pay much attention to the not in not repression, or in the without repression. It doesn't pay much attention to the negation, the idea of the negation of it, of repression. It pays attention to the feeling, though, the emotional response associated with the word repression. And with respect to your goal, that feeling is a negative one. It's not constructive. It moves us emotionally in the opposite direction from the goal. Your subconscious mind responds to that feeling because it is a feeling and awareness, and because it is one that runs counter to your goal. Your subconscious mind then tends to work against you with respect to what it is in fact that you do want, that you do in fact want. It can actually draw you toward repression, at least by not drawing you toward not repression. State only your goals with every word. That is being affirmative. And this has been a bit of the reasoning involved with it, with this step. Again, your subconscious mind largely ignores not and pays attention to feelings and their actual objects. The object of the example feeling here is repression, not the logical connector, not. By now you begin to see why it is the case that up until the outset here, you probably could make good use of goal definition refinement. You might suddenly realize that up until now, your goal definition had included a lot of what you didn't want. And that won't do. So complete this step now. Make sure every word is in harmony with what you do actually want, what your goal really is. Now, next step, I call to tell the truth. Okay, that all this done now so far. Next, ask yourself, is everything that I have now written true? Maybe it is. Maybe it isn't, but check it. Check it. For example, did you write something like, I do not develop cumulative stress over close contact with other people's traumatic experiences? Did you write something like that? I do not develop cumulative stress over close contact with other people's traumatic experiences. Perhaps in anticipation of having fully actualized the goal in your life. Maybe you worded it like that. I do not, rather than I don't want to, or whatever. Now, of course, that statement violates the previous step about affirmativization, because it says I do not. But the immediate point is that the statement is probably untrue for you right now. Or perhaps you wrote something like, within 1 year I will have completely overcome a tendency to be bothered by horrible mental images or others' tragedies. If you did write something like that, then you wrote something that you do not know for sure is true. In either case, then change what you wrote to make it currently true. But be aware that you can begin a statement with words, I will, but only if it involves something that you know for sure will be the case. Otherwise, it is quite useful to start each statement with something like, I desire to. See, that makes them true right now. Whatever it takes to give them the truth value of true, do that. Do it now. Now we're moving on to the transmuting phase. A bit more hermetic art. But at this point, I just want to stop and say a little word about fluxing. When it comes to mental alchemy, fluxing is largely a matter of balancing. Balancing something out. That's its flux. So we're working with a specific goal that involves a specific kind of career here, for example. Now, what we would want to do is figure out, that involves a certain area of life and a specific kind of work. It involves tragic circumstances, aiding other people. It can be other people we don't know. So, you don't have to do this right now. This is something that would be an ongoing thing in your life. Every time that you are employing this goal or working toward this goal, you might get a slight rough idea right now, though, about this. What is something that balances that? What area of life is a balance to your work in general? Maybe the idea of play. What is a balance also to the idea of dealing with very tragic circumstances? Just kind of consider that. What is the thing that balances that out? Just think of the various aspects of the goal that we're in overall here, refining to raise to a higher mental plane level. And just think of, its various components and its overall general nature. What sorts of things, what other things in life could tend to balance that out? That's fluxing. That's enough fluxing for this purpose. The purifying enables the goals to be transmuted to a higher level. And we've done that now. An aid to the continual transmutation of it is to flux it now that it's been, purified. All right, so consider over the long haul here in your life, giving attention to activities, classifications of activities, and some specific ones, activity in the general class to balance out the instantiation of your goal and movement toward it. Okay. That will help with the transmutation as well, as an ongoing thing, as an ever-increasing effect, which is a really good idea to get into gear with. Transmuting, a bit more hermetic art. Your list is now purified. It is clarified, affirmative, and true. The real metal is now exposed, so to speak, by having removed the slag of ambiguity, of denial, irrelevance, and falsity. That's right, isn't it? That's what you've done. We now want to transmute your purified list into its highest, most lasting, and most usable form. Notice again, of course, that I am using the alchemical terms purify and transmute. as the two phases of your goal refinement. As I previously indicated, it will benefit you to gain hands-on experience with the processes they denote. Traditionally, transmute largely denotes our into its highest, that we just said here. But for our purposes, the three statements, highest, most lasting, and most usable, blend together anyway, as well they should. See, that's good pragmatism. By the way, you cannot transmute the impure. It just won't do it. It won't go. It's one of the cosmos' natural filters at work. You cannot transmute the impure. But in my opinion, the two processes are not entirely unique to one another. They do have a sense of working together. Allow this immediately preceding that I just said to serve as a suggestion that you are engaging in an alchemical transmutation process here. You really are. You're doing it with something that is very, very close to you. Let it in. Let in this process. Be aware of it. Do it on purpose. Don't be afraid of it. Endorse it. Put your whole being into it. Now let this suggestion sink down into your brainstem. Actually feel the suggestion to let this process in sink down into your brainstem. Even picture it happening. All the way down in to your brainstem. And from there, down your spine. I mean this literally. And then through your whole body. Okay? Do that. Command your subconscious mind to let it in. Go ahead. Command your subconscious mind to let it in. How do you do that? You just do it. Say, subconscious mind, let it in. Now. And focus on it. Intend it to happen. Place your attention on it. Focus. Intention. Think of the meanings of the words as you say them to yourself. Say them loudly and slowly to yourself. Make it happen. Make it real. Give it meaning. Put your whole being into it. Make it a personal ritual. It's vital. And feel it sinking in to your whole body and to your subconscious mind. And then trust that it sunk in. The suggestion that you are engaging in an alchemical transmutation process here. Now the next step. First part of transmuting. Your now purified goals. Ethicalization. Commence with raising the list to its highest, most lasting, and most usable form by first asking, does what I have written involve only actions or results that I would want everybody in the world to engage in if they were in my shoes? Does what I have written involve only actions or results that I would want everybody in the world to engage in if they were in my shoes? If yes, you're good to go. If no, then change the parts that are no. Change them now. Change them until the answer is yes. See, this makes it ethical, which is in your own best interest. And as you do this, maintain your precision. If you change any wording, redo the previous steps to keep up to speed with the purification. Maintain your precision. The next step is motivation. Ask yourself, does each thing that I have written, does the feeling I get from it include a motivating factor for me? That is, does it feel like it pushes me towards some action? Said another way, does the meaning of what I wrote incite with me some positive emotional response? If it doesn't, then something is not quite up to snuff for the intended purpose here. See, in that case, to the best of your ability, change it so that it does incite within you some positive emotional response. Especially a positive emotional response that would push you toward action. It's the emotional connection that motivates. So here we're infusing motive, emotiveness into our goal. Now, why do I bring up motivation? Goals and motives aren't the same thing, but as I've said earlier, the terms, as I said earlier, they're not synonymous. So what's the deal? Well, let me go back over a little bit of this again now that we're here at motive. Part of the deal has to do with the fact that they aren't the same thing. A goal is not necessarily a motive, or is not necessarily motivating. And a motive is not necessarily a goal. But a goal can involve motive. A goal can motivate or not. It depends on how you define the goal, which depends on how linked it is in your mind with a related motive. So goal and motive can blend into one statement. All that it takes for something to serve emotively is that it involves emotional content. Usually such content pushes us to action. It is quite useful here for the goals to also serve as motives in several ways. For one, they keep you interested in doing what it takes to actualize them in life. Recall that we wanted to transmute the goals into their most usable form, see? And we want them to be ethical. So here's the point at which we're addressing these various aspects at the same time. Make the necessary changes to your list now. Just do the best you can. And remember, as you make any relevant changes, if any need to be made, maintain precision. That was motivation following ethicalization. The next step is idealization. With that done to the best of your ability, now ask another question. Does what I wrote refer to ideals? That is each goal stated in ideal form? If you wrote, I desire to significantly improve at helping people without suffering later, that's not only non-precise and involves some of what we don't want. The main point here is that it's far from being ideal. For one, it refers to suffering, which is not the kind of thing we want, but it also, in another sense, it's not very ideal. It carries with it a negative or unlikable feeling, for one thing. And for another, again, the without part of without suffering is not affirmative, like I've already said. That's less than ideal. But those points have already been discussed, albeit not in terms of idealism. The more important immediate point here is that the words significantly improve, and I desire to significantly improve at helping people without suffering later, refers only to improving, rather than to doing something perfectly. Improvement, even significant improvement, is not ideal. Perfection is. Make your motivating goals ideal in writing. Change their wording to idealized form. Make them ultimate. This is a key step. Well, they're all key steps, but This is a key step among the key steps in transmuting the goals. Make them ultimate. Make them statements of the best, the highest degree. At least so that further down the road, that aspect of them needs no revision. For you evolved to the highest standards in the first place, in your original formulation, in your original conception, your grounding, your end result. State them right now in their ideal form and maintain precision. Now here's an instrumental note about idealizing involving an action. With that done, consider some of the characteristics of this idealization part of your goal refinement. You're not just introducing your subconscious mind to these consciously and carefully formulated ideals. You're also doing so by tapping into and starting to identify with the part of your being where these ideals, in fact, are real and existent. That is, you attentively are drawing out from the real within you the idealized form of where you are headed in your mundane application as, say, an emergency medical technician, to continue with our running example throughout here. You are making that idealized form fully conscious and then willfully inscribing it back into your depths again. Full circle. Mentally picture that circle. And I mean to do that. That's the action here. Mentally picture it. So let me tell you what it is again. You're not just introducing your subconscious mind to these consciously and carefully formulated ideals, okay, from conscious to subconscious. You are doing so by tapping into and starting to identify with the part of your being where these ideals in fact are real and existent. So that's a deeper part. Okay, so you're drawing from there. You're going both directions here. Okay, at the same time, you are attentively are drawing out from the real within you the idealized form of where you are headed, making the idealized form fully conscious. So we're going from conscious to subconscious and from subconscious to conscious. And then we're willfully inscribing that back into your depths again by the act of what we're doing here on paper and with all of its attendant mental operations. We're planting the whole thing back down into your subconscious. So we're going from conscious down to subconscious, drawing something out, okay? Working with it consciously, and then planting it back in. We're going full circle. I want you to picture that circle. Picture it. Mentally picture it. Happening. Intend for it to happen. Intend for it to happen. That's what we're doing. That's the action here. Mentally picture it. I want you to see it. I want you to feel it. See it and feel it. Do that. Additional characteristics are that this draws something within you, something at a higher mental plane level with these idealized formulations now. From potential toward actual. Draws something within you, something at the higher mental plane level, from potential toward actual, from passive toward active. And it brings multiple planes of your being into harmony over the matter at hand. And therefore with no perceptual conflict among those planes. Picturing this circle with these idealized formulations now, these formulated ideals taking place. Understand what's going on, picture it, intend it, place your attention on it, Throw your whole being into it. Idealizing is very transmuting. If you are fully content with the result of this step, skip the immediately following, but you're going to have to bear with it. So let's assume you're not fully content with the result of this step. You might say, but, see, this is a possible objection to idealizing, which involves necessary action to get around it, to get through it, to get through the objection. You might say, there is some perceptual conflict. What if a few items in my list are now untrue because I'm not really after the ideal? That's a real good question, right? Or what if I don't believe ideals can ever manifest except as ideals qua ideals? You know, they just stay ideals. They never really manifest. What if I don't believe that, you know, what if this is just unbelievable now? Furthermore, what if I think ideals are bunk? Right from the start. Or what if I think they are unattainable? And now I don't feel good about my goals now that I've written them in idealized form. What if I don't even feel good about them now because I don't think they're actually attainable? What if I have any of these objections? They're good objections. But first, just to clarify the answer to a potential question at this point. If you think ideals are real enough, not bunk, and you feel attracted to your listed ones, then the idealized form of your goals is no less true than it was before. That is due to having previously made their less idealized forms true. Making the goal into an ideal then does not change its truth. So all is well if that's the case here. And with that said, if after having idealized your goals you find that you are not attracted to them now, that is, you are not after the ideal, and so now some of your goals are no longer true because of that, because you aren't really after the ideal, then you must either change them to a less idealized form or refine what you really want so that it corresponds with what you have now produced on paper. Well, the recommendation here was to idealize your goals in the first place, right? The consequent implication is that if as things stand, you are not after the ideals now that you see them on paper, you should try to figure out why. And see whether you can discredit your reasoning and adopt higher standards. Thereby refining what you really want so that it corresponds with what you have now produced in idealized form. To help with this, go back and listen to what I've already said a little bit earlier on about idealizing involving an action. That was the part about picturing the circle. That might help. To help further, your goals should reflect the very highest degree of attainment. Why not? That way they remain always before you. You can always work toward them. Otherwise, you might have to reformulate the whole thing later. Besides, why sell yourself short? Why set your sights on lower mind limitation ideas? Lower mind ideas of limitation. Doing so is unnecessary. And it's limiting. If you cannot accept this line of thinking right now, then reduce your goal definitions from ideal downward, but only to the point where they are again true for you. No further downward than that. That would produce the most idealized form of them that is true for you right now. If done perfectly, the statement done perfectly is unacceptable, then perhaps done nearly perfectly, in your goal statement or the spirit of the idealization of your goal, then perhaps done nearly perfectly fits. If that idea fits in there, if that's as far idealized as you can go, take it that far. I mean, that's more idealized than the idea of significantly improving something, which we spoke of earlier. And by the way, notice that done nearly perfectly or significantly improve in something in your goals, while limiting, they have no clear end. How much is nearly or significantly? They aren't precise terms. But perfectly, while not limiting, is a precise term. And that's ideal. Next, what if you do not even believe in any notion of ideals, such that the statement, the most idealized form of them that is true for you right now, isn't even a valid notion for you? Well, that objection actually carries little weight. For when you made sure that your list was true, it already approximated some notion of idealized form that is true for you. Few people deny all notions of idealism. I don't think you have this problem. Now, here's a big one for some people. What if the notion of fully idealized form turns you off because you now view your goals as unattainable? That's different from taking them to be untrue. But all the same, if you take them as unattainable, they could generate a negative response in you. This would mean that while your goal statement might be true, attaining the goal seems like a farce. In that case, you perhaps have missed the point and got lost. People often say, set attainable goals. They must be attainable. No ideals, because they are unattainable. Well, that's very lower-minded. Regardless of how you may balk at what I'm suggesting here, that is lower-minded. That is a characteristic of lower-mindedness. I suppose such thinking might be practical for some applications, but not for this one. This application involves something that requires a major shift. And that's what we're doing. This is where it starts. We have to reach into higher levels of mind here. One reason why many people have not solved the problem implied in the original question here in our hypothetical scenario, a running example throughout, is that they have not reached beyond intellect into higher levels of mind. Their intellects tell them that ideals are unattainable and therefore they comprise irrational goals. Can you see the mechanism at work behind what we mean when we say being bound by limitation? The intellect is limited. It knows limitation. And it convinces us of it within sound reason. The higher mind, however, knows no such bounds. This is not to put down the intellect and its reasoning power. Intellect and its reasoning power serves a wonderful purpose. Its reasoning faculty protects us from errors. It just can't see everything. Interestingly, when we get something from the higher mind and let it in and accept it, and the intellect considers it for a while, it decides that the new thought is a great one after all. I mean, after all, there is a lot of sense in making our goals ideal. But only if we have truly got the ideal from the reality of the higher mind rather than merely come up with it as an intellectual exercise. The limits must dissolve. They must be realized to not truly exist in and of themselves. They dissolve in the light of the higher mind, where perfection really exists. To intentionally and consciously do what seems impossible requires the dissolution of assumed limits. This dissolution is usually not sufficient, but it is necessary. We either set our sights for the very highest and plot the course accordingly, or eventually have to revise our limited sights as we slowly approach their limits. We want the very highest from the start. This does not mean that we will necessarily get there in this lifetime, and that's okay. We do not need that limit in our consideration here. We don't need that limit in our consideration here. After all, we don't know how long this lifetime will last anyway. It could end tomorrow and our plan to buy a car next week wouldn't even happen. Or by some fluke it could last 200 years. And if we adopt the truer notion that we have more lifetimes ahead and break free of the limiting idea that our goals have to apply to this physical lifespan only, the possibilities get blown wide open. One thing is for sure, though. Doubt will bar the way. Doubt will bar the way. Now, none of this means that we ignore setting intermediate, clearly doable objectives that plot the course toward the goal. Aha! If we choose key objective involving methods that provide for limitless progress, we're good to go. If we choose key objectives involving methods that provide for limitless progress, we're good to go. We must not only ultimately set our goals in ink. Remember, we've been using a pencil. We must not only ultimately set our goals in ink, we must pencil in our course. Right now, you happen to be on the course of penciling goal refinement. But how can we plot a course such that it does not limit us if we direct it towards some limited end? This is important to understand. This entire discourse is about the plot. Idealized goals are part of the plot. They literally take part in the action. Recall, we want goals of the highest, most lasting, and most usable form. Remember that? If you had any of the above objections to idealization, and you lowered your written standards when I suggested to do so, but now you've got past your objection, change your written true goals back to idealized form now, to the fullest extent that you can. Like I said, this is an experience. Now preparing for the final transmuting step. Preparing for it. Occult insight and feeling. Now is a little break from the immediate activity. I think you understand the kind of thought process is going on here when I point out observations such as the ones that I just pointed out about idealizing your goals. Well, practice similar thought processes about all the information in this entire discourse. You'll gain tremendous insight into how things work when they actually do work. You'll gain tremendous insight into the principles underlying outer affairs. In this case, writing your idealized goals on paper is just the outer affair. There's plenty going on behind the scenes. There always is. The more you're aware of it, the more it goes on. And the more intentionally you can make it happen. Which in turn, again, makes it go on even more. Throw into the mix your fullest possible attention. And the whole thing gains more power. Feel what is happening. And it comes more alive. Consider the meaning of each word in a verbal description of whatever is happening. And the affair gains depth. Add in clear mental pictures of what's going on. And magic rolls out. Add repetition to the entire recipe. And it turns into a freight train. But where's it going? Beware of such freight trains that have no refined destinations. I'm going to read that to you again. There's always something going on behind the scenes. The more you're aware of it, the more it goes on. And the more intentionally you can make it happen, which in turn makes it go on even more. So throw into the mix your fullest possible attention, and the thing gains more power. Feel what is happening, and it comes more alive. Consider the meaning of each word in a verbal description of whatever is happening, and the affair gains depth. Add in clear mental pictures of what is going on, and magic rolls out, and add repetition to the entire recipe, and it turns into a freight train. But where is it going? Beware of such freight trains when they don't have a refined destination. There's a lot in that paragraph, right? For now, just remember the gist of it, and later on come back to it, listen to it again, use what it says to do on the information in it. Use what it says to perform action with that information, on that information. Feel, when I say feel what is happening and it comes more alive, feel that. Feel the meaning in that. And when I say consider the meaning of each word in a verbal description of whatever is happening and the affair gains depth, do that to those words. Get real familiar with how this works. This manner of thinking in which you are engaged is that of an occult philosopher and an occult doer in life. And the work that you are doing here, well, involves acting like one, see? It's thinking like an occult philosopher, and the work you're doing here is acting like one. Together, the thinking and the doing involve being one. It's a far cry from armchair speculative philosophizing. This is also being a practical psychologist. At the occult level of relevant affairs, the distinction between philosophy and psychology blurs. For that matter, at any level, many divisions blur, and at the ultimate core of affairs, all divisions are an outer appearance. Now, I'll point out a lot of these sorts of things as I go here, but I can't state them all. And we're actually coming to near the end of this video, so what I've written here does continue beyond where I'm going to go. So I'm referring to some things that I'm not going to say here when I say I'll point out a lot of these sorts of things as I go. I have been all along. Whether I point them out or you figure them out for yourself, in either case, take a moment to absorb the insights, please, and feel their meaning and significance. This is a video you're going to have to watch over and over if you really have interest in it, if you want to get much out of it. There's a lot in it. And right there, when I said feel their meaning and significance, to absorb the insights and feel their meaning and significance, take that word feel to be italicized. With that italicized word feel is another opportunity to gain some further insight. There must be some reason why I repeatedly emphasize feeling something. And in this immediate case, it is something that people ordinarily would not pay much attention to feeling. Again, whether I point them out or you figure them out, you know, all the sorts of things that are going on here at one time, whether I point them out or you figure them out for yourself, in either case, take a moment to absorb the insights and to feel their meaning and significance. That's something that people ordinarily wouldn't pay much attention to feeling. Given all that you know so far, what is so important about feeling? What might be significant about not just having an insight and contemplating its significance? What might be significant about not just having an insight and contemplating its significance, but also feeling its significance and its meaning? How might the answer apply to attaining your goals? We've already discussed it a bit, but not directly. I'm going to let that answer a bit up to you for now. It's later here in what I've written, but I'm not sure we're going to get to it in this video. For now, easily allow into your awareness the feeling of the activity going on here in refining your goals. Motion is happening. And you have awareness of its nature. Feel it. That's enough about that for now. Finalizing the transmutation. Last step. Universalization. The previous step was what? Idealization, right? Now we're at universalization. Now with all that done, and your awareness absorbed in the deep level of motion going on here, let's get back to the program. Ask a final question about the list you wrote. Is it stated universally? Now, some of these steps may have blended together such that you've done some of the work for a following step in a previous one. And it might be the case here. By now, there may be no work left to do in this last step. It may be done already, just kind of like by accident. But we want to make sure that this step is done, no matter how it gets done. Whether it's already accomplished, just as a secondary result of everything you've done before, or whether it needs to be addressed right now and carried through with. Universalization. Ask a final question about the list you wrote. Is it stated universally? In other words, it's precise, it's affirmative, it's true, it's ethical, it's motivating, and it's idealized. But does it involve universal application? For example, does it refer only to people having heart attacks? Or only to helping them physically, if other levels are relevant to this project? As in the EMT example running all through this video. Or only to your own well-being? Or does it apply to every situation across the board within the relevant domain of application? In this case, again, being EMT work as you perceive it or will likely perceive it in the future. If it doesn't apply across the board within the relevant domain of the application, then change it so that, to the best of your knowledge, it never needs revised to involve increased application. And as you do so, maintain precision. First, though, when I asked, is it stated universally? Does it involve universal application? Did the sudden awareness of the idea of universalizing your goal create a perceptible change in you, however slight? When I first said it, as you considered what that means, did you feel a slight change, maybe? Just a little one, a slight one? It did create a change in you. Just the introduction to the very idea. But I'm asking whether you perceived it. If so, what did it feel like? Easily allow that subtle feeling again, if you can, right now, and feel it. And now, go to your paper and universalize your goals. Maintain precision. So now we'll review very quickly the rules of goal refinement. Delineated, precise, ethical, affirmative, true, personalized, and meaningful. Felt, emotionally endowed, and motivating, idealized, and universalized statements about what it is you're after. That's what you've got now. Those are the attributes of right, refined goals. After going through all of that, it should now be clearer than it was at the outset, that at the outset, you had only had a vague notion, and not a very refined one, of what it was you were after, and where you were going. Consider all of these attributes of right, refined goals together for a moment as being mere aspects of just one whole event. Consider their importance in all goal defining. And consider their importance in your current list right now. Remember, what we're really doing here is setting up what a self-improvement program would look like. Perhaps you can follow this through with this from this example to the letter. It'll do you good if you do, or however you're going to apply it. Now, preparing for the big event. Well, I mean, what are we going to do with this list now? Two things. Several things. The next thing to do is called the hermetic seal. That's what I call it. Engraving. What you have accomplished is purifying and transmuting your goals on paper, with all of its attendant mental attributes. But you've done it on paper. And while you did it, you reached corresponding levels of refinement within your own being. You did. But what you have on paper is in pencil. The paper is a worksheet. The inner levels you reached were called on during the work. They served as the inner worksheet. Worksheets are preparatory for something else. Whether the outer or the inner worksheets, they are preparatory for something else. In the outer world, the physical plane, you will now put your goals in ink. That in itself is symbolic of something going on inwardly, especially when we go about it with that in mind. At the same time, in the inner world, in the deepest area you reached during the inner worksheet phase, and even deeper, you will now engrave your goals. is the most important part of the work. Consider that your goals are now endowed with life. They are endowed with consciousness. You put your whole being into this, right? Like I said, do this as I say to do it, with earnestness and perseverance, attention, intention, the whole bit, everything as I've said, as it's been built. And you started off with the mood of calm confidence or with some state of relaxation and attention. You have endowed this work with consciousness. Their consciousness is the offspring of yours, your goals. They are endowed with consciousness, and their consciousness is the offspring of your own. They came from yours and were purified by yours and were transmuted to their highest form in the heat and the light of your higher mind, which is fueled by the fire of your spirit, which in turn is endowed with the power and other characteristics of the universal parent consciousness. They came from all the way in there, which is also everywhere, out through your intellect and then through the hand onto your paper. That says a lot. And it's all true. The final step now is to reverse the direction. We're going from worksheet to engraving now, remember? That's a reversal of direction. It is to intentionally engrave your living, refined goals back into your depths. We already, all throughout, have been doing little circles, little loops here, right? And we've become aware of that. Now we're doing a big one. That is, back into your subconscious mind and onto your will. Onto your will. Engraving it right into your will. For real. Hermes Trismegistus, the thrice great Hermes, is known as the father of alchemy. And some say the god of language, interestingly here. And from his name we have the word hermetic, which is in the phrase hermetic seal. Roughly it means to tuck away and to seal airtight in hidden areas. With a capital H, the hermetic seal locks something into place in the hidden realms. It is an occult seal, in other words. In our case, we do not render something inaccessible here, but we're locking it into place so that it can't be removed. And we're leaving the door open for it to act and for it to grow stronger and deeper. What lies immediately before you are not only to write your transmuted goals in ink, but to hermetically seal them, as stated, within your deepest regions. Those regions are now involved because of what we've already done, and they are waiting for that to happen because of how you did what you've already done at that level, at their level. The outer writing is done with your hand. The inner engraving is done with everything else. The act has specific gravity. It is solemn. This is the irreversible moment of truth here. In fact, this is the irreversible moment of truth that formally kicks off the entire project. That is stated in the goals. Now, this next section tells you how to do that. Hear it through to the end. If you're following along here and taking action, Follow it through to the end before you do any action, and go back, listen to it again as you go, and be ready with that breathing and relaxing exercise that you did in the very first place, or that mood of calm confidence, summoning that mood of calm confidence as you've learned to do in the calm intention technique video that's here on my channel. Be ready with that. Now we are here at the Hermetic Seal. As I said, go through this whole section before doing anything, just so you know for sure what you're going to do. Then when you're ready, come back through it and just do it as it says to do it. Start when you're ready and do exactly what it says to do, bit by bit, as it unfolds in the instructions. Here goes, starting now. All the power of the... This is solemn. It chokes me up a little bit. I'm feeling the meaning of the words. All the power of the universe is behind you in this. Even though it already has, ask it to join in and back you. As you are its child and its instrument. Then get out a pen and fresh paper, or other media such as a paintbrush and a canvas, or for that matter, a chisel and a stone slab. But absolutely no keyboarding. As you get them, hold in your mind your true intent with them, to hermetically engrave and seal your living goals into your subconscious mind and onto your will, in full view of the universe and with its seal of approval. With your writing implements before you and your worksheet before you, invoke awareness of core control. I want to tell you what that is. Invoke awareness of core control. Invoke any level of awareness above what you currently have of control of your mind and your body from an inner part that is neither your mind or your body. An inner part that sits still while your mind and body are used as instruments of action. I call that core control. Control from the core. From the core that sits in there, always at rest, while your mind and body are used as instruments of action. Invoke awareness of core control with your writing implements before you and your worksheet before you. If you need to, try something to get this sense of core control. I want you to just move your hand like I just did. Like you'd ordinarily move your hand. I want you to notice a difference. Move the hand, okay? There we go. Move the hand. Move the hand. Now I want you to notice a difference. Do it differently. Do it a little differently than perhaps you've ever done it before. Put your hand on your leg, let's say, and don't move it. Just as a muscular action. Become aware of your arm being part of your body. And as such, it is an instrument for you to use. It is your arm, which is part of your body. You are not the body. Your entire body is an instrument. Become aware of that. You are separate. You are not the body. Now, in order for you to get your body to do something, to use it as the instrument as it is, to get it to act in an instrumental fashion, your mind has to get involved. But you are not your mind either. Become aware of that. Your mind is another instrument. And it works together with your body to get your body to do something. So become aware that you're not the mind either. You get it to get your body to do something. And there has to be some power involved for all this to happen. And that power is will, volition. I want you to become aware that the active part of it isn't the real you either. The real you sits at the core of that power. That's the real you. That's the essence right there. That, when you operate from that awareness, however slightly, you are operating from an awareness, a level of awareness of core control. Now, I want you to move your arm from some level of awareness of core control. That you are getting your will, the power of your will, you are instantiating the power of your will, actualizing the power of your will to get your mind to get to work, to get your body to lift your arm. I don't want your arm to move until it's done like that. From that point of awareness, from awareness of core control. In that manner, now move your arm. It's a different thing. You direct your will to move your hand from the part of you that does not change. Now, with your writing implements before you and your worksheet before you, invoke awareness of core control. Then simply, to the best of your ability, from that part of you, just easily direct your whole being to be thrown into the following effort. Proceed to carefully, neatly, slowly, and meaningfully, and with utmost unbroken intention, and with utmost realization of why you intentionally are doing it the way you are doing it, handwrite or hand-print your final result. Start by writing the following title at the top: List of Motivating Goals. Let me read that again, even though you're going to listen to all of this again before you do anything. Proceed to carefully, neatly, slowly, and meaningfully. All of those. And with utmost unbroken attention, and with utmost realization of why you intentionally are doing it the way you are doing it, handwrite or handprint your final result. And start by writing the following title at the top: List of Motivating Goals. Under the title, write the following. Oh, and by the way, some of this I have adapted from L.W. de Lawrence's book, I think published in 1914, something like that, called The Master Key, which is the same book from which I got the idea for the calm attention technique that I developed and posted elsewhere here in my channel. Some of this is adapted from that same book. Some of this procedure. He doesn't go into nearly the detail that I do, though. but some of it's adapted from it. Now, under that title, List of Motivating Goals, write the following. My list of motivating goals concerns matters. Here it is. My list of motivating goals concerns matters over which I have deep, absorbing interest. And that, in fact, move me. Period. I write and then repeat them with greatest care. I write and then repeat them with greatest care. Period. I write and repeat them with strong will. I write and repeat them with strong will. Period. I feel that I now engrave them. I feel that I now engrave them into my subconscious mind. I feel that I now engrave them into my subconscious mind, comma, and upon my very will itself, comma, as in fact I am doing. Period. Once done, then will your list to be engraved in those places. Just like you just now wrote that it would. That it would be. Now will that to happen? In the same manner that you willed your arm to move. Now write your list like you just wrote and willed that you would do. And feel and mentally see it happening as you do it. Feel it happening and mentally see it. This is a new thing here. Don't just see it happening with your eyes, but mentally see it too, such that if you were to close your eyes while you were doing it, you would still see it. It and all else that is happening with it. Mentally see the act going on, not just with your physical eyes, but also with your mental sense of vision. The sense behind the sensory organ, the physical sensory organ. Use it. And feel it. Once you've done that, there it is. It's done. You did it. Now feel the result of that. Sit there and feel the result of it for as long as you like. And thank the universe for joining in and backing you with its power. You know why it's backing you with its power, right? Because of all the work you did leading up to it and the nature of that work. Thank you. Thank the universe for joining in and backing you with its power. And vow to always remember it. And your complete dependence on it. And vow to remember this moment. And that it is for everybody. And then right now, command your subconscious mind to keep you reminded of it. Excuse me. Keep you reminded of those things. Thank the universe for joining in and backing you with its power. Vow to always remember it. And your complete dependence on it, the universe and its power. Vow to always remember this moment and that it is for everybody. And then right now, command your subconscious mind to keep you reminded of these things. Then maintain your same level of focus or attention, but shift its direction away by placing it on the breathing and relaxing. The same way you started out. I told you to have that handy. Be ready with that. This is when to do it. And now, that done, trust that the goal refinement and engraving work is finished. You've given it its due attention. You don't have to put further attention on it. Any further attention now would be undue. Trust that the goal refinement and engraving work is done. It is finished. And trust that the reasons why you did it, the way you did it, are now transformed into the results that you intended. That they are set into place. You have made the mold. You have poured in the substance. It is real in the mental and the astral planes. They are the mold for the mundane plane. The deed is done. The deed is done. It is a done deal. It is sealed into place. Trust that you have given the goal refinement and their engraving matters their due attention. It is over. It requires no further attention. You did what you needed to do at this point. Any further attention to that would be undue and would just waste energy. It is done. Therefore, any further thought about the act ought only be in the form of remembering having performed it. There is one thing left to do. It immediately follows here, and you might as well do it now. First use of the engraving. Activation. It's like when you get a credit card, a new credit card, you get the card, right? You have to call up and activate it before you can use it. The first time that you engage conscious interaction with your engraved goals brings their power to work in your conscious life. It, so to speak, activates them in your awareness simply because you are consciously doing something with them. It also informs your subconscious mind that you know they are in motion in there, and that you intend to play a conscious role in that motion. As an act of your will, slowly and deliberately read your entire list of motivating goals document, starting with the title. As an act of your will, slowly and deliberately read your entire list of motivating goals document, starting with the title. Use your mental sense of hearing to hear each word loudly in your mind as you read it. Hear it. Say it. Read them. Say them mentally. Hear them mentally. Each word. Place your full attention on each word, considering what it means to the point of feeling it. If you are familiar with the calm attention technique, you'll recognize that instruction. Make sure that you do it 3 times in a row. All the way through each time. 3 times in a row. All the way through each time. When you perform any repetitive sequence like this, make each time through cumulatively more deliberate, attentive, and endowed with meaning than the time before. More deliberate, attentive, and endowed with meaning than the time before. Do that 3 times in a row. The cumulative effect of deliberation, attentiveness, and meaning endowment. By cumulatively, I mean similarly to the result of pressing an accelerator pedal incrementally toward the floor in a car. Each time you press it further, your miles per hour starting point, your speed starting point, is the result of the previous time you pressed it in an increment. You don't break to 0 miles an hour and start over again each time. You press a little, you get to that speed, you press a little more and you increase speed, and you press a little more and you increase speed. It's a cumulative effect. Enter this action with the understanding that as you do it, your motive-directed willpower, pay attention to this, please. Your motive-directed willpower sees its own motives. Up close and down deep at the same time as you are doing this, as you are performing this repetitive sequence with your list of motives in the manner prescribed, after having engraved them the way you did, created them and engraved them the way you did. Enter this action with the understanding that as you do it, your motive-directed willpower, now see, due to the engraving, now sees its own motives by the action you're now taking. Up close and down deep at the same time. Coming at it both levels and everything in between, because we've become aware of the loops that were taking place throughout the process. See? I hope you're getting a picture of how this all works. I hope so. If not, put this all aside for later. Or go back through it again and again and again. Or pass it to someone else. Don't throw it away. Don't discard it. Don't disregard it. Whatever you do, don't totally disregard it in all manners. Please. This is valuable information. And it's packed full of clues and hints that can be used in other ways too. It's a multifaceted redundancy loop, like a glorified mirror reflection of a mirror. You can almost feel it happening as you're doing this. This understanding presupposes that you trust all that you did previously when you defined or when you refined and sealed the goal. You did it, now you're using it. Do it now. And remember, attention. Now with that done, recall that I said, and now you use it. Use it how? Well, in addition to your subconscious mind doing its long-term work to bring about the best results in your life through circumstances, through your now deeply supported conscious effort, one immediate function of your motivating goals is to maintain and even to increase your interest in the rest of your goal-oriented work. We're just following a basic formula, that being motives create interest. That's just one level of things that are going on here. At the same time, you deepen and strengthen your engraved goals. And with respect to them, the direct line you have created between the outer and the inner. You're strengthening you're strengthening that too. Additionally, you gain ground with a new way of thinking about you, your will, attention, thoughts, action, your mental sense of hearing, your interaction with things you've planted into your subconscious mind in your minute-to-minute experience. This all is, in fact, within your control. The proof is at hand. Your actual skill in reading your list will evolve. There will be evolving instruction to do it every day. You will gain new useful skills as you do. For example, you will learn to control the volume in your head. Now, I'm referring to further instruction here that I'm probably not going to get into in this video because this is going on at some length here. And I've given you um, what can be considered a complete set of instruction to this point. We're almost there now. I'm soon going to cut this off. You can learn to control the volume in your head. You also learn new ways to absorb written information. You develop your mental sense of vision too. These are all things that I guess I'm going to have to get to elsewhere. You learn to see your goals written mentally. You will come to feel them at work in many levels of your experience. They will become so much a part of your conscious life that you cannot imagine them falling anything short of eventual complete actualization, just due to this one evolving technique alone. Note that when you're working like this with the mechanics of your interface with reality, progress has penetrating, spreading, and multifaceted effects. You might notice them soon. And when you do, please understand that you created them by acts of your will. You are the responsible party involved. I didn't cause them. The training didn't cause them. You did. It was your earnestness and it was your action. You're taking charge. Whatever you create is yours. So far, you created an on-paper expression of motivating goals that are also engraved in your will and in your subconscious mind. Many creative artists have strived for years to express something that lies deep within them on canvas. You went much further in a shorter time. For in the least, what you created self-perpetuates. Remember, motives create interest. Motives create interest. And remember, too, that you must do all that you can to actualize your goal. Relentlessly but easily at every opportunity. That includes but is not limited to all the rest that this project includes, which I regret I can't get into. And by is not limited to, I mean, for example, to look for and employ all relevant opportunities. To decide or will to do something and then to not follow through at the right time or times weakens your will and acts to repel the desired result from your life experience. Doing the opposite has the opposite effect. Following through at the right time or times strengthens your will and acts to attract the desired result. Given the scope of the material in this project, almost everything about your life will be opportune. And the time will almost always be right. This actually helps with the ease of it. Now, for the week to follow, continue doing the relevant things that you've already been doing, but now do it starting with performing the reading of your list of motives, list of motivating goals, in the same manner prescribed above, just a moment ago, the same way you activated. Continue doing relevant things that you've been doing, but now do it starting with performing that instruction. This serves multiple purposes. Importantly, be aware that every time you do it, you're strengthening the connection between all of your work and the desired goal. Think about that, the connection. When you connect activity to a goal, the involved motion involves orienting the activity. When you constantly strengthen the connection, the motion or vibration is toward the goal. You are bringing about the goal. Recall the laws at work in that and get used to the idea that you are employing them with full knowledge, and that result is inevitable because it is the law and you are performing your duty to the law in obeying its aspects. That corresponding actual experience must follow. It is the universe doing its thing through you. Trust that, and it will make the state of affairs all the more the case. Now, here are some observations about all that just happened. And by the way, start every day with the reading of your list of motives. And whenever you go into an action that has anything to do with them, or wherever you see an opportunity to achieve your goal, recall a motive. Recall the goals. Recall just one of them, one of the statements. Any one. Keep it in mind and read the whole thing, like I said, every day. Always working toward the improvement of your comprehension of what you're doing and how you're doing it. Here are some observations about all that just happened. At the very least, you now know exactly where you're headed. You can see it on paper, it's yours, and it's good. You have spelled out some of your motives too. Now everything that follows can make some greater sense, at least with respect to where it's heading. Everything to follow will lead there. That's logical, and it's intuitive, and it's practical. And doing this involved understanding and action. Any blockage or uncertainty that popped up during arriving at the said understanding or performing said action, from your initial scribble to the hermetic seal, was clogging the way of you truly knowing where you were headed. But now you've got it. It's a hefty accomplishment. You're in the driver's seat more now than ever. And feel that. Feel that, please. Feel it. Go ahead. Feel it. Repeated attention to the paper list, done in certain ways, cuts the engraving deeper and deeper, waters it, gives it even more life, as well as maintains your motivation to do the other things that are parts of the overall plot. The paper list and the engraving are intimately connected, you see, as are the areas of the planes in which they exist. There is now a direct and continuous line from the outer to the inner. You will both deepen and strengthen that line. Your line runs from paper to subconscious mind. It also runs from material plane through the astral by way of your emotive feeling, through the lower mental by way of your cognition, and into the higher mental, at least because of the intense refinement. Always remember the line, and that it ultimately originated and keeps on originating in the universal. And that it has purpose involving humanity and all life. And that, again, instruct your subconscious mind to keep you reminded of those two facts. To help you live up to your earlier vow to remember. Remember that? Your persistent deepening and strengthening and remembering increasingly will help fundamentally to actualize the project result. In fact, you now have many ways to do that. Use them. They are all harmonious aspects of the one way. I had hoped to go on with various things here. There's a lot more involved that I have here. But I think that's enough. That's a good stopping point, stopping place. I would suggest that you familiarize yourself and get working with the calm intention technique. And you can use these two things together. Everything done here in this video with that. Get your goals, your overall life goals written down, refined. Figure out where you're going. For your whole life. I mean, what are you doing? Where are you going? Go through this process for yourself. It's going to take some work. You might think you know what you're doing and where you're going and what really motivates you. I mean, you put this process into action, and this, you know what? I've given this process to various people to do. People who have come to me, some who have paid money for help. And very few, a low percentage of them, have actually completed this task right here that I just gave. And that's just the beginning. That is just the beginning of a more comprehensive personal evolution training program and maximum performance training program. This is just the first step. This is a tough step, though. It requires a lot of work right up front. But once it's done, it's done. Remember that? Once you get it engraved, once you get it out there on the paper in the manner prescribed, right? And engraved in. It's locked in. It's done. But getting to that point is difficult for people. Most of whom thought they already knew where they were going in life. They already had a clear understanding. But they could not get this done. Either because they just didn't feel like it, because they thought it was trite, or because they set themselves to it and gave up. Which actually probably gave them the idea that they weren't very clear on much about their lives. And then in quitting, doing this, they gave up on a process that would make things a lot more clear with just some effort. So, I'm just going to stop here, and I encourage you to do this, and then work your motives with your mood of calm confidence. Go into your mood of calm confidence with a motive in mind. You know, I mean, like, why would you be invoking a mood of calm confidence? Why would you want that? What are you going to use that for? Where's it going to go? What does it apply to in life? Go into it with a motive in mind. And whenever you read your list of motives in the manner prescribed here every day, let's say every morning, do it after you've invoked the mood of calm confidence or summoned the mood of calm confidence, done your mood of calm confidence exercise. Start with it. I recommend actually recall a motive, do your phase 1 of the calm intention technique, right? And take the mood of calm confidence that results into the full-blown reading of your list of motives. Wow, what a difference it's going to make in your life if you do that every day. Now, I've got more stuff for you, but it's going to have to wait till another video. There you go, man. 3 hours, 22 minutes, and 20 some odd seconds. 25. Be well.